Right, so we built out most of the API over here. What we now need to do is we want to connect Firebase and set Firebase up. So essentially our API will consume data from the database in Firestore. So let's go ahead and go in Firestore. And first of all, what I want to show you is the current or the final build that we have, which is essentially this one is consuming the data from the Firestore database. So again, over here, we have a collection of feature flags and we also have a collection of recipes. So that is how you would basically create them, and let me quickly show you how to do that from scratch. So let's create a new project, and if you haven't created a new project, then you just go and Google it and basically do console.firebase.com. I'm going to call this feature flags YT like this. Again, you can name this whatever you want, but I'm just going to call it that. You can enable Google Analytics as well, so we will be doing that. And then again, you would have your account anyway, so that will be set up on there. So again, this is setting up everything we need. So the two items we need from Firestore or Firebase is Firestore DB and Authentication. So we will be setting them up. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I press continue, now if you see this here, it says web. What we want to do is click this, and this is basically to set up hosting for our app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say feature flag YT, and let's click this one to set up hosting. There's no deploys yet, but we will be setting that up. So let's register that now. Then we get our SDK, we get our CLI and so on. What I also want to do is install Firebase, and actually this is for front end, so we don't need that. What we want to do is install Firebase admin, and the reason we need Firebase admin is to set up the SDK. So let's just ignore this. I already have this one set on my machine, but if you haven't, then set that. So you just basically copy this, put it in your terminal and paste it in, and it'll install everything for you. And this is how you would host your application on Firebase. So this is mainly for the front end app. We are going to be using something called render to deploy our API for our backend app. So let's just continue the console for now. So that's essentially it. So in build here, we first of all need to set the authentication up. So let's just get started with authentication, and I'm just going to set up Google authentication over here. That's the easiest one. And again, we can just basically fill in the information and then press save. So that's as simple as it is for authentication. So that's the authentication setup. We also need to set up the database, so Firestore database in here, and the database basically is the where we hold our recipe list, our feature flags and so on. So essentially it's just create a database in here. You can choose the location. I'm just going to choose Europe because I'm in Europe, and then we can start in test mode. But again, if you look at production over here, you basically need to set some security rules up. So this is an extra step that you need to do to secure your data. So what we'll do is we'll start in test mode. So let's create this. So now that's creating, what will happen is we are getting everything set up. So this is our Firestore, and then we need to configure our collections in this database. So again, it's basically the ones we have. So again, I'm going to go into my code in here. If we go into our controllers actually, and over here you can see the collection we are making is recipes. So let's copy that one. Let's create the collection of recipes, click next, and then we want to generate an auto ID. So that's the document itself, and then in here we have if we go into recipes and then the response, and you can see here we have the keys and the values. So let's do the key of title first of all. So title is a string, and that is spaghetti carbonara like this. Then the description, we'll just do the description, and again this one is creamy pasta, but essentially we are setting some data in here, and the image URL is the last piece of information, and this one is essentially from this URL. So now we save that. So that's our first collection complete. We just need to do another one for our feature flag. So that's quite simple. We go in here, feature flag is feature name and also enabled. So let's go in our collection, create a new collection, and the collection name is feature dash flag. And to double check that, again we go into our feature flags controller. Database we're calling is feature flags like this. So let's go in our Firebase, paste that in, next, generate a random ID, and then we need the two keys and values. So feature name is going to be featured dish, and again you can have multiple in there like the dog theme, and then the featured dish is going to be enabled as true. So enabled, and we change the type, so this is a boolean and this is true. So we save that. So that's all fine. We have a feature flag and the recipes now like that. So that's all good. So now what we want to do is connect the database to our API, and the way you do that is through Firebase admin. So we need to install that. So let me go in here and do npm I firebase admin, firebase-admin, and that will install for us. And then what I want to do is create a new folder called config, and it's going to be in Firebase, the files firebase.js. So now let's double check that the Firebase admin has installed. So if we go in here, you can see Firebase admin has installed. So now all we do is const admin is equal to require Firebase admin, like so. And then we want to initialize, or we could do the service account, and basically we get access to the account that we generate. So essentially we need the admin SDK. So initialize Firebase admin SDK, and that is the credential is admin.credential.cert, and then that's the service account we are importing over here. So what we need to do is create this file. So let me just copy this, or we'll actually import it in. So the way to generate this SDK is, if we go in Firebase, in settings over here, project settings, it says here service account. So if we click on that, and now what we want to do is we want to, you can see here Node.js, this is basically what happens. So we want to generate a new private key, so let's generate that. So now you can see this is over here. So essentially that's in my downloads folder. So what I'm going to do is open this, and I have it on my other screen. So what essentially I'm going to do is create a new file called service account key.json. So service account key, or whatever you want to call it, and I will add it in and be right back. Right, so now that I've added that in, essentially it's basically connecting our database to our API. So we can basically close this one off now, and what I'm actually going to do is create a git ignore file. So when we upload the code, it's not included, and essentially in here we exclude the node module, and I'll just fill this with many others, but essentially we want to also ignore the service account JS. So that's config / service account, and I'll actually just copy this, rename, copy this .json like this. So now that's saved. So now I think that's pretty much done. There's one more thing missing, which is the middleware, and what I'm going to do is talk to you about the middleware next.